Hey guys, what's up? It's Alex here, and welcome to episode number 2 of Formula One's Abandoned Racetracks. So I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone that watched the first video on this. I was so astonished to see the amazing response on that video, so thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. That's the reason why I'm doing a part 2, is because of the amazing support on that first one. You guys wanted me to do a part 2, so here we are here today with episode number 2 of Formula One Abandoned Racetrack. Let's go. So we're going to start off with a track in Brazil. I'm never going to be able to pronounce this right away. Don't look at my sheet right now. So it's called the Autdromo Internacional Nelson Piquet track in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So this track held the Brazilian Grand Prix in 1978 and then 1981 all the way to 89. It was built on a marshland between the years of 1971 and 1977, and that first race was held in the 1978 season. It actually had a massive maximum capacity of over 90,000 people. That's absolutely incredible. But sadly for the 1990 season, the Grand Prix went to Interlagos and it stayed there ever since. It did race some kart races, motorcycle events and other smaller events, but sadly it was demolished in 2012 for the Olympics in Brazil, where they were desperately in need of some space. It's actually really sad to see sort of tracks like this, which had a lot of history in Formula One. I mean, that's nearly 10 Grand Prix that this track held, and just to be obliterated like that, or it was taken away, the Brazilian Grand Prix to Interlagos. And I suppose for me, I love Interlagos. It's up there in one of my favourite tracks, so I suppose in a way I'm not too disappointed this track isn't on the calendar, but considering it did hold so many Grand Prix, and Brazil is a massive sort of catchment area for Formula One fans, loads of people in Brazil love watching Formula One, it is kind of sad to see this track go. And obviously after Formula One leaves, a lot of the funding goes, and unfortunately they tried to keep it going, but unfortunately just wasn't going to be any sort of money sort of coming in for that track, so unfortunately it was sort of abandoned in a way, and then left to be destroyed in 2012 for the Brazilian Olympics, which is understandable. There's not many places to build on. This was probably quite a secure facility, but still, it's a racetrack. For F1 fans, motorsport fans, it's always going to be hard to see a track which has got big history in motorsport and Formula One. It's always going to be sad to see that one being destroyed. So a lot of you guys wanted me to talk about the Ring in Austria. Of course, this is what the Red Bull Ring used to be before it was the A1GP, and then it was the Ring back in like the 80s. But this is a track a lot of you guys wanted me to talk about because the old layout was quite controversial, let's just say that. The oldest layout of this track was 5.9 kilometers long, and it added a chicane named Helle Licht in 1977. Apologies, that name is probably absolutely butchered. Many people who raced on this track believe that it should be taken off the calendar because of how dangerous it was. Some of the track was just basically road and had no protection to the cars that were going faster and faster and faster, completely destroying the track. This prompted many to be concerned about the track and whether it really should be staying on such a high prestigious Formula One calendar. And even though they did add the chicane in 1977 and that did slow the cars down, this was still a very, very fast track, and people saw this as, if not one of the most dangerous tracks in Formula One, and I think a lot of people expected this to be wiped off the calendar very, very quickly. Sadly, there were quite a few deaths at the Ring because of its nature of just having massively high speeds. A lot of the deaths occurred at the Bosch curve, one of the quickest corners, if not the quickest corner in F1 history. The old track was left, and they sort of abandoned the old part of the track. They left the old Ring, they tried to redevelop it into the A1GP track. That eventually deteriorated as well, just crazy parts of the track just being left to rot away in a way. But then the Red Bull sort of big franchise came over and sort of started redeveloping the track, and we saw that on the calendar. I think it was at the 2014 season we saw that back on the calendar, and I think it is a really, really good track, one I actually really want to visit as well. I think there's, it's sort of esteemed in F1 history. I'd love to go and visit it for myself. But yeah, the Ring, it was incredibly dangerous. A lot of people loved it just because of the high speeds, but I think a lot of drivers, even though they're probably the ballsiest people on the planet, they could not sometimes deal with the high nature of risk around this track, and obviously a lot of deaths sadly did occur around the Ring because of that massively high speeds that it did occur there. Next up, we've got a Grand Prix track that was based in Belgium. I know for me, obviously Spa is the one you think of when you think of Belgium Grand Prix, but this was actually a track that held a Grand Prix in 1972 and 1974. It was called Nivelles Ballers, and I apologise, probably completely wrong. You guys know I'm not very good at my pronunciation. You've already seen it in this video, I can't pronounce stuff right, but this held a Grand Prix on 2 occasions in Belgium, but it didn't really take off. So by the looks of it, through my research, the idea of this track was to sort of alternate between this track and Spa. It was sort of built as a safer alternative to Spa, but many people believed it was actually too safe because it didn't provide much good racing at all. It had huge runoff areas and it was described as very boring by most people that went to the track themselves. The track went bankrupt in 1974 and that meant they could not hold any more Formula 1's events. Like with a lot of these tracks, when they run out of money they quickly deteriorate and it was left to be abandoned in 1981. They did try to race on it after Formula 1 left, but unfortunately there was not much success like some of the other tracks mentioned in this video. It really is sad to think about these tracks. People spent lots of time trying to think and design these tracks to make them exciting, but I think in this case as well, or mostly this case, Nivelles Ballers, probably pronounced wrong, I think the problem with this one is they made it too safe in a way that when you make a track too safe, no one's going to want to watch it because it's just so boring, and making boring races is never a great thing. So totally understandable why it went bankrupt, because no one's going to be turning up to a race that's boring. But once again, there's people that are losing their jobs in these sort of scenarios, and it is sad to think about all the people that put their effort, time and money into trying to get this track up and going. Unfortunately, evidently failed, but Spa, still great part of Formula 1 history. At least we do have some fantastic Belgian tracks still, and thankfully this wasn't all that Belgium was relying on in terms of a Grand Prix. So a track you guys absolutely hammered me for not putting in the first episode was Sakaya Lamia, a track that was built in 1961 or opened in 1961 in South Africa. It's esteemed in Formula 1 history. This is a track that pretty much everyone knows. Of course, they sort of raced on this track until quite recently, about 20 years ago, they were still racing on this track. So it is sad to lose this one, but I'll give you guys a bit more history about where it all went wrong for Sakaya Lamia. So as I mentioned, this track was opened in 1961 and held Grand Prix events from 1967 to 1993. The track was first changed in 1985 after they received political sanctions about problems with the current track. It was rebuilt in the early 1990s as part of a commercial development. The new track was around 10 seconds slower and most people disliked the newer layout. After just a few races into using the rebuilt track, the new track was abandoned in 1993 after going into bankruptcy. They've tried racing at Sakaya Lamia since, but they've really struggled to see much action on the track since 1993. However, recently they acquired an FIA license and are now trying to get up and running once again. The track is now owned by Porsche. So who knows, Sakaya Lamia is placed in quite a sort of commercial area. There are lots of houses and stuff around the track, so who knows, it's going to be quite unlikely we're going to see a Formula 1 race back at Sakaya Lamia. I think there were always discussions, they wanted to get it back there because it was such a popular track back in the day, but when they had to initially change it because of all the political sanctions, a lot of people said it ruined it at that part of the track's history. So that is a sad thing, but that's the way it goes. Unfortunately, we can't get everything we want in Formula 1, as you see. Nowadays in Formula 1, political things means that, stuff like the halo, which a lot of people dislike, is being forced in, that sort of stuff. Anyway, this is not a halo debate. Let's move swiftly on to the last one, or the last main one I've got in this video. So lastly, we've got a track in Argentina. This is the Buenos Aires GP track, and this held GP events intermittently between 1953 and 1998. So surprisingly, even though a lot of you might not have actually heard of this track held 21 Grand Prix events in that time, the last of which being in 1998. Once again, due to financial difficulties, the 1999 Formula 1 Grand Prix there did not take place. In 2012, there were talks to try and bring a Grand Prix back to the country, but nothing has ever been signed. I looked myself and the track is still there today, it still stands there nice and proudly, but there are no official races being held there. Their current website says, "We are building something new." Wow, that gives you a lot of information about what's happening there. When I looked on Google, it kind of looked like it was a car dealership there, so I personally am not sure. It's kind of hard to find proper research on this, but it kind of looks like it could be just a car testing facility right now, or somewhere where the car salesmen have a bit of fun at lunchtime sort of thing. I don't really know. It's kind of hard to look, but obviously I'd have put a picture on the screen to show you. It's still there, it still stands there quite proudly, and it's kind of sad that it doesn't have any racing action, but I understand once again they run into financial difficulties and then they struggle to get back up and go once again. As we've seen, when Formula 1 leaves an event or racetrack, they really struggle to get back up and going again. Some recent examples, we talked about this in the last episode, India and Korea. Formula 1 has left those two tracks, and who knows really what happened to them in terms of India especially, but I think Korea still holds some smaller touring car events for the local country. So that is it for this video, guys. Now, quickly before you go, I know a lot of people are putting comments down below about tracks that just aren't in Formula 1 anymore, like Brands Hatch, for example, but they still hold big events nonetheless. Now, this series was about abandoned F1 tracks, ones where they've sort of just left them there and they've gone away. And it's not tracks that have sort of gone on to race many more events in the past. It's tracks that are now sort of totally abandoned and not used anymore, obviously with the exception of Sakaya Lamia, which has sort of come back in this episode. But I would do a series actually, or I could possibly do a series on lost Formula 1 tracks, like Brands Hatch, for example. Maybe we can leave some comments down below if you'd be interested in those videos. So if you'd like me to do a lost Formula 1 tracks video, leave that comment down below. That'd be massively appreciated. And yeah, so that is pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really would appreciate your support on this one once again. So if you could leave a thumbs up, that'd be fantastic. Also, if you could remember to subscribe to my channel, that'd be absolutely fantastic as well. We passed 53,000 subscribers thanks to you guys, and hopefully we'll go, 54, 55. That'd be awesome by the end of this year to maybe get over 55,000 subscribers. So that is it. Sorry for rambling on at the end of these videos. I always do it. But have a fantastic day, guys, and I'll see you guys around soon for another video. I should have some really exciting stuff coming soon. Fingers crossed. It should have been recorded on Monday, so slap me if I don't get those videos up soon. They should be epic. Thanks for watching, guys. Have an epic day, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.